And so the Mongrel has come home. Last Friday, the steps of the Kenyatta International Convention Center witnessed the exchange of vows as one of a most unlikely political unions became a reality, signed and sealed. So what's next in the Ruto-Raila deal? Cabinet changes? Principal secretaries reshuffle? Diplomatic appointments? It is an extensive Mongrel edition as we peruse the 10-point marriage vows between UDA and ODM. On Jamila's memo, it comes straight off the kitchen table with 1 million ways of making a chapati. On Bonya's bone, why are Kenyans dancing with anarchy? He picks a bone from a fake police station. Sam Sense is a three-way debate with members of parliament, the third party being surprise itself. Kaikai's Kicker reflects on VIP security protocols in the wake of hit-and-run killings. And on My Take, what the Constitution of Kenya hides in text, an MOU can reveal in pictures at KICC. The gang is here. And tonight, on a musical note.
Majina mumeniongezea. Mulisema hustler. Mukasema survivor. Mukaongeza ingine Zakayo. Mukaongeza ingine sasa Kasongo. Sasa hii majina yote munaongeza mpaka itafika wapi? Mobali nanga. La di la la Kasongo ye. La yo. Bala ni kala majina imezidi. Ati chapo. Basi hata hiyo chapo ni sawa. Tuendelee na chapo pia.
The Mongrel edition starts right now. The hashtag is it's Newsgang. The handle is at Citizen TV Kenya. And you can actually send us a text message tonight. The number is 22422. Sam Gituku is on the SMS line, and he will be looking out for your text messages. Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. And maybe it's the dogs edition, but Mongrels. Not even pedigree, hatujafika hapo bado. Not there yet. But look, we were here last week on the eve of, you know, the big union, or maybe reunion, you know, depending on how you want to look at it if you consider Kenya's political history. Jamila, how did we get there?
You know, if one was looking at the date today, it's March 13th, and I remember around February last year, 2024, we were still talking about shareholders. I remember we played that soundbite several times, and you're talking about shareholders. That tells you where the country was in terms of the relationship between those who were in government and the opposition at that time, which was led by Raila Odinga. A year is a very long time in Kenyan politics. We've said that before. And then I think it should not be a shock for Kenyans when Raila and the president finally formalized their political union. Because I remember there was some point last year we saw pictures coming from Kisozi in Uganda, the farm of Yoweri Museveni, Uganda's president. And in those pictures we saw the president, Yoweri Museveni, we saw President William Ruto, and we saw Raila Odinga with a lot of bulls and cows. And those pictures, of course, caused a lot of speculation, people wondering, what are they doing there? What's happening next? I remember around the same time, the relationship between the president and his then deputy, Rigathi Gachagua, was already on the rocks. Mambo yalikuwa yameanza kuharibika. Ghafla bin vu, as we say in Swahili, Raila Odinga announces his AUC bid. And then suddenly we have the government machinery supporting him, with President William Ruto leading it, traveling with him to all those African countries he was going for. Pictures of him with the Raila and presidents of those countries trying to get him the support he wanted. And then now, after Amezunguka, you see Minister of Foreign Affairs is behind him, the Prime Cabinet Secretary, you see the PS, they're all singing Raila's praises, not forgetting that less than 7 months before all that, walikuwa bado wanamsuta. So this was no longer a uhusiano ambao haukuwa halali. Ulikuwa sio uhusiano wa kufichwa fichwa.
They were dating. They were beyond talking stages.
If you say so. Alafu, ikakuwa formalized. But I think for many Kenyans, it became a bit confusing, Yvonne, because we talked about that Mongrel comment. And I remember when the president was speaking then, he talked about how the importance of the opposition is. In fact, he had talked about how he wanted his cabinet secretaries to go into parliament so they could answer questions about accountability. And he'd even wanted the speaker to change the standing order so that CSS could come into parliament and be able to answer questions. But then what changed? I remember even him speaking in Rwanda at a meeting with President Paul Kagame and talking about how he would never go into any political arrangement with Raila Odinga. But then now, when you go back to what he said about Parliament and talked about how the oversight role was important at that time, but what has happened between then and now? So much so that you are attracting the minority to join the majority side. What happens to the oversight role that you talked about when you're talking about the importance of the opposition? So it's a bit confusing for many Kenyans who listened to what was said less than 2 years ago and now, about how things can change so fast.
Yeah.
He criticized the political marriage between Raila and Ruto, talking about how Raila and Uhuru Kenyatta over March 2018 and how all the problems that bedeviled this country was because of that handshake. But then he goes to the exact same arrangement with Raila Odinga with the 10 points, some of which were actually included in the arrangement that was in the report, the BBI report that was between Raila and Uhuru. And the last thing before I let you take over, Yvonne, we look carefully at the 10 points that are being mentioned and the similarities between those and what was in the BBI. Questions come up in terms of, did we need Raila to come into this arrangement so the government can start doing its job? Corruption, the youth, inclusivity, and all those things that are mentioned there. Maswali ni mengi.
Yeah, and it's been a long road getting there. And it's important for us also to remember that history and how we got here. And then we got to the steps of KICC, as Waswahili say, hayawi hayawi. Mwishowe KICC.
Yakawa.
Harusi tunayo, hatuna.
Tunayo. And so there we were, Sam. Now we see them, it's, that day, and they're there on the steps. And it was quite an interesting, event that was put together towards solemnizing this arrangement that had started somewhat informally, when they had some members of the ODM party joining cabinet, but this was now making it formal. Let's talk about that formal day. The deal is now made public, or at least what we imagine to be the deal, 10 points.
Right, and you recall that on the same day there was a parliamentary group meeting of the Kenya Kwanza Alliance in State House, a very interesting scenario because we later understood that there are several members of Kenya Kwanza that didn't attend that meeting at State House. And I recall that the day before there were those reports that there would be the Kenya Kwanza parliamentary group, then the following day there'd also be a meeting of Raila Odinga and President William Ruto to sort of sign the deal or formalize the deal that they were talking about. But also, at the KICC, you recall that, of course, our crew was there waiting for the event to begin. There were already several members, especially from the ODM side, who were already speaking so happily of what they were expecting to happen. They sort of announced the deal even before it was eventually signed. But you also look at the attendance of that event. Yes, representation from the ODM party, representation from the ODA party, but there are several key figures that you didn't see in that particular event. And obviously, when you listen, you also understand that it's a deal that was really handled quite secretly when it comes to even what document eventually and this I'm quoting, quote unquote, the principals are eventually going to sign. But I think of keen interest, and I don't know if you have those pictures that you will look, yes, I think they're on the screen. The body language and the sort of dressing that you saw in that room. You look at the Secretary General of ODM, Edwin Sifuna, how he was dressed. I've seen him dressed differently. for important functions.
I like your use of the word differently, because I know the word that you really want to use, but we'll work with differently. That's fine.
Yeah. So again, him coming on to read the statement that he was supposed to be reading, and you find the choice of words was very clear, because not long before that particular event, he had said that he was not in agreement of such an interaction or a relationship between ODM and UDA. And then him coming to make a case, sort of explaining to the questions that Kenyans are going to ask, especially when it comes to where his position now is. I think we can listen to what the Secretary General of ODM and also the Senator of Nairobi County had to say in regards to his role in that meeting.
We have taken the liberty to read out this memorandum of understanding so that we are all clear on what it is and what it is not.
Right, an important one. And you recall that he was also saying that his presence there, or his participation in that event, was because he has certain roles that as a Secretary General he has to play. But then again, you went ahead to hear what the deal is, which is pretty interesting, because when you look at all those key points, and I know you will be getting into the specifics of those particular points, you realize how you don't see anything that is earth-shaking to say that this is what the country had been waiting for. And we've been having conversations the entire week, and you're not able to trace really the genesis of this particular deal, the conversations that have been now translated into the 10-point document. You look at the legal consequences of this particular document. There's nothing binding on the person of, say, ODM leader Raila Odinga or on the side of President William Ruto, because most of those particular points are things that the leadership could easily implement when it comes to delivering on their mandate and, of course, following the Constitution.
And this is where then it goes to then, Jay Bonyo. Now, you know, you're starting to see the organs of the party also now singing the tune and speaking towards this issue.
Interesting. Yvonne, I think just like Sam says, the organs of the party were whipped to take part in an arrangement that had already been sanctioned and consummated elsewhere, if I have to say. Because you look at the roles that they were playing. It was merely adding cream to a cake that is already ready for cutting. Mm-hmm. And I didn't see any substance in the roles that these party organs were playing. Because at one point, Raila Odinga made a very interesting statement that when I came back to thank the president for supporting me, I found that some of these party members had already put something together for us to sign. Mm-hmm. And that tells you that already there was a working arrangement, there were deals, there were papers that had been prepared and was just waiting for people to sign. And that is when he says, I had to go back and consult with my people. And he mentioned something interesting again that says, I was doing a random sampling to find out what my people are saying. So ideally, this deal that true to its essence has got no legal backing, was an arrangement that had already been made, and the KICC ceremony was just for the members of the public to be made aware that we have this thing that has been going on, and today before man and God, we are telling it to you. But it was already working elsewhere. Yeah,
it was. Linus, though, wasn't it?
No, I'm just taking interest in his very language that is that associated with clergymen.
Yes.
It was a marriage being celebrated. So.
Celebrated, yes. I think, not the other one.
Not the other. Yeah, and those who will look at this and say this is not a marriage but a reunion of two political personalities that have worked together before, because there have been references to 2007 when Raila Odinga and William Ruto worked so closely
in founding the Orange Democratic Movement all the way back in 2005 when they were together in the Orange side in the Constitution referendum. But in my view, what we are witnessing is potentially the final stages of the steps by President Ruto to inherit the political base of Raila Odinga. There are a lot of things that are said in KICC, and I just want us to listen to President Ruto when he was explaining the MOU.
Sema hayawi jamii zote za Kenya pamoja, dini zote za Kenya pamoja. This memorandum of understanding is not about sharing positions or winning elections. It is about the people and the interests of Kenya.
I'll tell you how to consume political statements. When a politician says this is not, remember the fact is that is exactly what it is. And you know, the president said that it's not about personal interests, but this is mathematics. President William Ruto is looking for a new political base. We know what transpired with the Mount Kenya base when Gachagua was removed, Rigathi Gachagua, former deputy president. And this translated to a political parting of ways. And President Ruto could not sit behind and just wait for 2027 because he's quite exposed if he doesn't have a starting base. And that's why he's looking at the Raila Odinga base as a potential base to which to turn to. And I just wanted to say something about the two politicians. Raila Odinga and William Ruto, very similar in their styles. Populist in nature. Their politics is driven by crowds. They are both inspired by the sunroof and rallies. If they stand there and see crowds, then they'll get a lot of things to say. But the two also became enemies, political enemies, in a very bitter way, just preceding the 2013 elections. And at heart was the issue of ICC, the International Criminal Court, which had taken William Ruto and former President Uhuru Kenyatta as suspects to the Hague. And William Ruto at the time felt he didn't get sufficient support from Raila Odinga. But of course, there is another episode there that is believed to have caused the bad blood. And that is the position of Deputy Prime Minister when the Grand Coalition government was formed in 2008. William Ruto, who evidently fought harder for Raila Odinga's race in 2007, was relegated to, and he was actually a very strong mediator at the Serena talks. He was a representative alongside Musalia Mudavadi. They were representatives of the ODM, and the position of Deputy Prime Minister went to Musalia Mudavadi. That didn't go down well with William Ruto. And that's why I know we spoke last week about betrayal. Betrayal has always been, it is the currency of politics. A friend will be singing praises right now and stab you right the next meeting, which is why even what is happening currently, you know, don't walk in with a stiff neck, because things change at a moment's notice. We've seen politicians declaring brotherhood one time, and then the next minute they are parting ways. But bottom line is, this is about 2027, the next election, and President Ruto is looking for a path. If you don't have Mount Kenya, what is your next path? I think last week I explained my theory of the mountain, the lake, and the valley, and the rickshaw that can only sit two. So right now, the lake and the valley are in, and the mountain has to work it out outside that lane.
Yeah, and now that we are, looking at it, and maybe I don't know if the devil is in the detail, or if, the communique and the MOU that they signed actually reveals anything about some details of where this is headed. 10 pointers that were in that. One, the full implementation of the NADCO report, that's the National Dialogue Committee, inclusivity in all spheres of public life, protecting and strengthening devolution, promoting and protecting the livelihoods of young people, leadership and integrity, the right to peaceful assembly and protests under Article 37, as well as compensation of all pending claims of abuse and derogation of this right, the question of national debt, which has been a big one in this country, the fight against corruption. 9th was stopping wastage of public resources and promoting government efficiency. And 10th was protecting and promoting sovereignty of the people, the rule of law, and constitutionalism. And this is what they signed, and it ends with saying, the two leaders shall, God, I need my glasses. The two leaders shall deploy their political infrastructure to examine the above matters and any other issues requiring their attention, and shall engage the necessary expertise that will assist them address matters arising. And then there was, slots for both of them to sign on the 7th of March, 2025. Details of that, Jamila, you had started to talk about in what ways this differs from, previous handshakes or previous deals that we've had.
Because Yvonne, remember, we talk about, before we look at the details, we talk about previous handshakes and previous deals that we've had. This was Raila Odinga's 4th handshake. The first one, of course, was with the late President Moi. And it was when there was a merger between KANU and his NDP. And then he was made...
was it Jogonde Ilimeza Tinga? I remember.
Nauliza maswali hapo ni ipi Ilimeza ipi. Nakumbuka wakati huo alafu Raila Odinga NDP join, and then there comes a time. You keep remembering that there comes a time. Saitoti. Yes, the late Saitoti.
March 18th, 2002.
Exactly.
Everything happened.
Oh, it happened. March. At that time, Odinga became a beneficiary, and he became the Secretary General of the new KANU.
Yes.
And then after the 2007 general elections, of course, there was the aftermath, the violence that engulfed the country. And then Raila got another lifeline, and he became a prime minister in a power-sharing deal with Mwai Kibaki. I remember the date. It was 24th of January, 2008, at the steps of Harambee House. And they were there with the former Secretary General of the UN, Kofi Annan.
And remember, that was a more detailed legal document that had far-reaching consequences on the country's, political
landscape. And even led to a national accord. We even had the new constitution after that. And there was so much that was included in that.
Electoral reforms, it was heavily packed.
So you could actually see inaenda mahali. There was a roadmap. And there are things from that deal that were actually implemented. Yeah. The big one being, of course, the new constitution in 2010. Of course, now, after that, it came the Harambee House moment in 2018 in March, when there was that handshake, which was basically unexpected, because I think it was just a month before when Raila Odinga was sworn in.
Yes.
Kule Uhuru Park. There was the other swearing in. So uhusiano ulikuwa mbaya sana. But then they came and there was that handshake. And then now, what we've just seen with Raila and Ruto. And you talk about how each of these ones had issues that were supposed to have been implemented. We talk about the 2007, 2008 one as the major one, because there was kuna mali ilikuwa inaelekea. Then 2018, there was another one. We had BBI. There was something in there. This one is not new, Yvonne. And we've talked about how some of the things you mentioned were in the BBI. But my other issue is this, Yvonne. The points that you've mentioned, ziko kwa katiba, some of them, that serikali iko na majukumu ya kutekeleza. When you talk about the right to peaceful assembly, iko kwenye katiba. The fight against corruption, iko kwenye katiba. Maswala ya stopping wastage of public resources. How many times have we had, tumetangaza kwamba hakuna safari zimekatwa, hakuna kushiriki katika harambee, tunapunguza gharama.
Auditor General.
That's supposed to. So most of these things are inclusivity. Bill of Rights, haki kama wa Kenya. These things ziko kwenye katiba. They are supposed to be implemented. Whether we have a coalition agreement or we have a memorandum of understanding or whether we've included opposition into government, these things are supposed to have been petition kwa sababu iko kwenye katiba.
Jay, do we know if there's an implementation matrix to this that maybe was an addendum or something to this? Because it reads, It's nice, it's fluffy, it sounds, you know, really fuzzy and makes you feel all warm inside. But it's not new. It's not. They even make reference to the NADCO report. The NADCO report says exactly the same things that this MOU, shall we call it, is saying. What's different for you?
I'm conflicted here because I'm trying to play the devil's advocate, but then again, I'm struggling with it because one of the things that was said at that meeting was that this was supposed to ease the tension that is currently being experienced in the country. And they did not go ahead to tell us how this was going to be eased. One of the other things they said was, and I remember Hassan Omar Sarai reading about leadership and integrity and saying that they're concerned about the opulence by public servants. And straight on, 2 days later, the president does his Sunday best. Honestly, this document is very loose because you don't know how best you are going, the matrix to check it or assess it by is not there. Unless there's another document that we are not privy to. But then again, one of the other things that they say that is interesting is that, and I think this is Raila who said that there'd be regular consultations and exchange of expertise. Maybe this is the most fundamental part of this deal.
Yeah.
Regular consultations and exchange of expertise. Because the rest of the document, I really don't see how. What is measurable? You know, we always talk about measurable and things that you can evaluate and all that. There's zero in this, unless somebody else will come and explain it later. But at the moment, the very document that we have has got nothing, apart from some commitments that the brothers were making to each other.
And, you know, using corporate speak, you know, what are the KPIs and who's going to do monitoring and evaluation? What you speak of is in the last paragraph. It says the dialogue and collaboration. So they're calling it dialogue and collaboration. That's what I guess is the fundamentals of this arrangement. Will achieve, between the two leaders, shall achieve its objectives by A, holding regular consultations, like you said, on pressing issues of interest to the people of Kenya, and B, exchanging expertise and information on best practices in the governance of the Republic of Kenya. And then that they will deploy their political infrastructure to examine the matters keenly.
Profound political
maybe that's the devil in the text, Sam?
Yeah, and early in the week I was trying to establish what is this political infrastructure. I must say it was a difficult...
we watched.
It was difficult to find what the answer is.
The infrastructure was right outside
Yes.
at the fountain and around that area.
Yeah, because part of the answer is that the political infrastructure is the politicians themselves, the members in the two houses of parliament, the supporters themselves, the organs within the political parties. So a very big answer for they know what to do. If you look at item number 2 of this deal, they are talking about all Kenyans are equal and all are entitled to an equitable budgetary resource allocation and opportunities in public appointments, because they're talking about inclusivity in all spheres of public life. I think I want to underline opportunities in public appointments, which is, this is likely that we're going to see very soon changes. Already we are seeing the changes in Parliament in terms of the leadership of different committees. Now we no longer have all departmental committees being chaired by members of Parliament from the Kenya Kwanza side. Of course, you will understand that they have drastically reduced after the fallout following the impeachment of former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. But this should be telling of the changes that could be coming. Again, remember, not long ago, on the 16th of February 2025, that dinner in Addis Ababa, and the President was speaking about this is a moment. It gives us a silver lining. It will give us, we need to embrace it and give us new momentum to a new way of doing things. So that new momentum, you don't see it in the deal, but you can already feel it in terms of what you're seeing in Parliament. And I'm also reflecting on Jamila, you talk about the handshake or the coming together between Mwai Kibaki, president, and Raila Odinga, first runners-up in that particular election of 2007. But there was another deal in 2002
yes,
where they came together, formed the National Rainbow Coalition.
Right.
Beyond that, there was a memorandum of understanding that someone would be made the prime minister.
Yeah.
And
a gentleman's agreement that was never honored.
Yeah.
What did that mean?
Yeah.
There was a fallout. If you look at key point, number one, and I think there's always a reason why something is number one, something is number 10, or whatever the sequence is. So this must be important to these two leaders and two political parties. The implementation of the National Dialogue Committee report, and heavy on it was the creation of a position of the Prime Minister, creation of the position of official leader of the opposition who would come from the party that doesn't win the presidential election. Shall we see an attempt to amend the Constitution to create the position of Prime Minister? And if that is done, when? Is it something that will be done progressively so that by the time you have the election of 2027, then it's created? Or is this something that is going to be created before then so that in not so long you find an appointee to the position of Prime Minister? If that were to happen, what would it then mean to the current setup of the cabinet, where you already have someone holding the title Prime, not Prime Minister, but Prime Cabinet Secretary? So that is something to watch. Remember, just before we go, Yvonne, remember when Mwai Kibaki did not create the position of Prime Minister, did not pass or bring on board a new constitution within the first 100 days that are not, apparently they're not supposed to run concurrently. What happened? There was a fallout between the principals. So what are the terms of engagement here? Who holds who to account? That if, say, the side of, now is it the government or the side of
it's
the UDA party doesn't keep the promise of honoring the implementation, full implementation of the NADCO report, or inclusivity of everyone in public appointments, or fighting corruption, or supporting devolution and strengthening it, if the side of government doesn't keep to that, so what happens? What are the consequences at a time that you're already seeing a change being implemented? And
you know, it's what you were saying about it could be in what they say that can tell you perhaps where this is going. I want us to listen to President Ruto, and he was speaking to Raila Odinga. Let's listen to that one first, because I feel like it sort of lays the groundwork for where this is heading. Let's listen.
You to be treated well. And I will do whatever it takes to make sure that you have respect in Kenya.
And then at the same venue, perhaps Raila Odinga tried to shed more light on that MOU. And what are the next steps? Watch.
The memorandum we have signed today does not define the formation of a political coalition between ODM and UDA. However, its successful implementation could inform the basis of steps toward the establishment of broadly constitutive and progressive formation for a stable country in future.
A broadly constitutive and progressive formation for a stable country in future.
It's a long journey, and a journey that began all the way back in 1960s in Lancaster, when we were negotiating for independence. At the heart of our problems is deep ethnic mistrust between political players. And players have never changed. Really, the sides are still the same. When you see all these political leaders talking about this and that, it is because they have this deep-seated fears of marginalization. What do I do for my community to stay here? And by the way, this explains why, for example, Raila Odinga has had the most handshakes as a political leader. I think the history of that region is being forgotten when it's easily dismissed that, you know, he is, what do they call him now? They call him a political broker. let me give you a little bit of the history. And you need to go back to Limuru Convention Center, 1966, when the center decided that Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, who was then the vice president of Kenya, had to really be weakened politically. And it took Tom Mboya, who was an urban-based Nyanza origin politician, Nairobi was his base, to come up with what was then considered a very smart move, split the position of vice president to, I think, about 6 positions, so that Jaramogi Oginga Odinga can no longer be the main or the only vice president. And remember, that is the beginning that marked the end of Jaramogi's stay with Jomo Kenyatta. And shortly after that, he had to resign. And the famous letter he shared was that saying that, Mr. President, I don't get assignments, so I have no work to do. So I don't find any use in staying with the position. And Jaramogi leaves. Then by 1969, July 5th, Tom Mboya is killed. Tom Mboya, he was called Sungura Mjanja, by the way, because of his very skillful political ways. He's killed along Moi Avenue, outside a chemist shop, shot dead in what was definitely something to do with succession politics. Jomo Kenyatta is aging, and the people around him are looking at who is it. And in my view, and if you read all the literature about the abilities of Tom Mboya, there was absolutely no other way of stopping Tom Mboya from becoming the successor to Jomo Kenyatta. Because there was only one other person that was as sharp as Tom Mboya, and that was Charles Mugane Njonjo. So there was only one way to do that, and that was done along Moi Avenue. Then comes the 29th of October, 1969, the incident at Russia Hospital in Kisumu, where Jomo Kenyatta went to open the Russia Hospital. At the time, ethnic grievances were really raw. Jaramogi is consigned to the political cold, and Tom Mboya is dead, and the president goes to Kisumu to open the hospital. The mood was very understandably really bad, because the community, the Nyanza community, was starting to feel that they were being sidelined. And you know what? After the Nyanza incident, Jomo Kenyatta was never back there until his death. That is nearly 10 years on. And remember, he didn't go there, and also the marginalization was actually quite active. Then by the 80s, when Moi now took over from Jomo Kenyatta, the grievances were still going on. There was a move by former President Moi to rehabilitate Jaramogi. They brought him in as the chairman of Cotton Lint. And Jaramogi famously said something about corruption and linking it to Jomo Kenyatta. You don't do that in those circles. And Moi was not very happy with it. And Jaramogi was shortly back again to the cold. And to cut the whole story short, if you think mountain, lake, and valley, there were so many years when the lake was subjected to active marginalization, very active. It's actually like an official position that they should not go a certain length in the political ladder. Now, coming way down, they fought for, and these 3 regions actually played a key role in the realization of the multi-party system of government in 1992. Then President Moi wins 2 terms. And then comes the 2002 election. Again, as Jamila explained earlier, the union between Mwai Kibaki and Raila Odinga. And remember, there's this nationalistic face they all put,
Yeah.
the front.
Yeah.
But remember, behind that, there are ethnic fears, ethnic aspirations of the communities they come from. So Kibaki becomes president and ditches the MOU. Not last week's, the other one. There have
been many.
The original MOU.
Yes. So again, and if you look at the conduct of the Kibaki inner circle in 2003, it was highly, highly ethnic in nature. It was basically Mount Kenya is back, so Lake move out. And by the way, the valley at the time also took a great hit. That is a time that now...
the valley and the lake, then?
No, both the valley and the lake really took a hit in 2003.
Yes.
Because that's the time now, it was almost as if they're looking at the names of where is the name coming from, and you are fired, you are removed.
Yes.
And top valley generals, valley civil servants, were removed from power and from office. And that is really what informed the 2005 coming together between Raila Odinga and William Ruto. Because both the lake and the valley were victims, and they were both out. Yeah. And so they got together and won. First, they first defeated Mwai Kibaki in the referendum of November 21st, 2005. And then now comes the election. ODM was founded because the orange part of the...
itakuwa chama.
Itakuwa chama.
And that's how it became.
Yes. But they had tested an election machine. It went around the country and defeated a sitting government. So it was a no-brainer, you know, make this, convert this to a political party, and use the same mathematics and defeat Kibaki in 2007. And that was the election that was held in 2007. Now, we are all very polite about what really transpired, including Johan Kriegler, the South African judge that came here to find out what happened. And he famously said, we will never know who won the election. I don't know whether there is sufficient courage on this desk here to say what really happened. It was mathematically impossible for Mwai Kibaki to win that election. It was mathematically impossible for him to win that election. And that's why the violence really that erupted. Now, again, it has been argued that it was planned. We were old enough reporters to see the bigger element of organic eruption of emotions, because the 2007 election was waited for by a lot of people, that we are going to answer our grievances through the elections of 2007. Now, when it doesn't happen, and somehow in some funny mathematics, Mwai Kibaki sworn in, it was, and look, I think we have the images there, it was getting dark and all that. So, again, that is what led to the 2008 post-election violence. Now, moving on, now MOUs again come, National Accord comes. All of them, what you notice that is constant about them is how grandiose they are. They mean well, they're very idealistic. Unity,
inclusivity, not individuals.
And all that.
People before party.
Yes, yes. So, now, the one thing that we have not addressed up to now, including last week, is the software. Is anybody tackling the issue of this sharp, deep-seated ethnic mistrust? And then, 07, the election, and what has happened since 2007, every election is treated suspiciously. You don't trust those numbers. And for a good reason. If you go by what the Supreme Court found out in 2017, where an election looks like it's a parallel process happening somewhere in a computer, and then there's the election that is done by real human beings. So there are so many things that we need to fix, especially in terms of the software. And the software we must go for is now, how do you build ethnic trust? Because these calculations, and already we are talking, and I'm sure we've all heard about 41 versus 1.
Yeah.
Why is that coming up now?
Yeah.
Why are there people who see the current political realignments in a very, very similar pattern as it was in 2007, where those who had grievances of the post-MOU fallout got together against the mountain? I think this is the thing we need to quickly move and address. And that's where the president and former prime minister, they need to be, and they are aware, I mean, they have been present right across all this. At some point, the skimming has to end. And the inclusivity must actually mean that it's all, it should not, inclusivity doesn't mean include Jamila to the exclusion of Joseph. It then again translates to non-inclusivity. So we have so many software issues to address, and I think the first thing we need to do is to be honest with our history. There are so many grievances right across, and I was trying to explain why Raila Odinga will find himself shaking so many hands. Let's admit it, there was systematic marginalization of a particular region to the point that they can't win elections. I mean, in 69...
And if they can't win elections, they don't get development.
Yes.
They don't, and resources.
Yes. And from the other side again, some use has been found of that vulnerability. And that's why you see those in office start with Mwai Kibaki. Actually, leave alone Mwai Kibaki because National Accord was negotiated internationally. Homegrown like the cooperation with Moi, the handshake with Uhuru Kenyatta, and the numerous handshakes. I don't know why we are counting one. There have been numerous handshakes with William Ruto.
The outcome of all of those?
We end up in the same spot because they are short-term in manner of what you are solving. We need handshakes, for example, that would say, let's build institutions. We are all going to fix the IEBC and make sure that we have credible elections in this country that can be won by any Kenyan as per the wishes of the majority of Kenyans. Are we ready to have that? If they don't, by the way, then this will be part of the generational changes that must happen going forward. And you know, generational questions cannot be ignored, especially after June last year, because the Gen Z generation, which everyone used to say, you know, they're just interested in PS games, they don't like history. They came here, they hit this town and asked the toughest questions any generation has ever asked, especially over sitting government.
Yep. And does anyone have the courage to actually do what you are saying? It's tough work. It's tough work. It's painful. And facing the truth is never the easiest. We're taking a break here. This is the Mongrel edition. When we come back, we're still talking about that deal. And now we're talking about the aftermath. So what happened after Friday last week? What's been the reaction, including from young people in this country who are now no doubt a factor in what happens in the country going forward? When we come back, it is after the deal is signing, or maybe now what we call the marriage. The wedding is over, now it's the marriage. What's that looking like? The hashtag is NewsGang. We'll be back in a moment.